Mine does too.
And
As is mine.
it is pushing out from Zoom. It's not yet up on the YouTube site though. Okay, so I see what you're saying. So it'll buffer. So you can go ahead and call to order, and then we'll invite the first applicant in.
Hi, I'd like to call to order the City Council Subcommittee Design Review Commission on Wednesday, April 22nd at 4 p.m. So first off, we will have a roll call. It's Mike Anderson, and present, and Gary. Oh gosh, I'm gonna mess your name up. Okay, let me get your name right. Will you tell me your name for the design review?
Patrick Collins.
Patrick Collins. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was thinking the wrong name. No, I wanted to fix that. And Patrick Collins and myself. And do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Well, I'd like to make a modification on the agenda, and I would suggest we have our public comments considered at the end of our interview session. So if comments come in during the interview, we can review them after we finish the interview process. That would be my motion for a change.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? We have to do a call out. So Mike Anderson
Yes.
and Patrick Collins.
Yes.
And myself, Susan Candell, I'm also an aye. So it does pass. We'll adopt the agenda and public comments at the end. So the first interview is with Armand Hadalou, and I will hopefully get him on the line here. Mr. Hadalou, are you here?
He is coming in.
Super.
Hello.
There we go.
Howdy.
Oh,
Hi. So you can hear us. Can you see us? Are you?
Yes. I'm just
Great. Oh, there you are. Super. I was not seeing you on my screen. Let me make sure I get you guys up. All right. So welcome and thank you for this. This might be the first virtual interviews that maybe Lafayette's ever had. I don't know. Is that true? Maybe Greg. So bear with us. We'll try to do this, and hopefully this will work out well in terms of format. And so we thank you for understanding in this pandemic us going through this. So welcome. And the first question, we're going to rotate doing the questions between Mike and Patrick and I. And so I'll start first. And my first question is, please tell us about yourself, your professional background, your volunteer experience, and why you want to serve on the Design Review Commission.
My name is Armand Hadilou. I live with my family, my wife, and 2 kids in Lafayette. And I've got a Bachelor of Architecture, a Master of Architecture, and also a Master of Urban Design. I got my Master of Architecture from UT Austin. And we've been living in East Bay for the past 5 years. Currently I'm working at WRNS Studio in San Francisco. We do housing projects. The studio basically has many different types of projects. I'm mostly involved with housing projects. And before that, I was working at David Baker Architects, doing a lot of affordable housing projects there. And before then, I was at Sullivan Cordwell Bowens, again in San Francisco, working on a few housing projects in Oakland, Jack London Square. 2 of them, they're actually under construction. 1 of them is close to finish. And before then, I was in Austin, Texas, doing mostly single family houses there. I'm involved at San Francisco Computational Design User Group, and that's one of my volunteer positions that I have. We work with AIASF, and we have a lot of training sessions for architects and who want to learn computational design and more of an advanced design. And we've held up these training sessions in different firms and also at AIA itself. HOK, SOM, they've been hosting these meetings. I'm also working with Emerging Leadership Professional Group to again I'm under the professional development subcommittee, and we are again holding some training sessions for young architects and engineers. And so as a resident of Lafayette, an architect, I've seen, and as living here, I see a lot of opportunities in the city, and being involved with architecture and design, I feel like I can contribute to the decision-making process in the city. And some of my career goals are, to just having projects that they contribute more to the environment. Sustainability is one of the main goals of the projects that I worked on. And I believe that with those values in mind, I would be able to help to kind of approve or contribute to better or with higher quality of projects.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I have the second question, and the question is pretty straightforward. Have you ever attended a design review commission meeting?
Yes, working on Jack London Square projects, we had to attend DRC meetings in Oakland, and also the project that I'm currently working on, it's going through the entitlement phase in Mountain View, and we have to go through the same process. Being in this field for for so many years, I've gone through the design review process quite a few times.
Have you been to one in Lafayette? I guess I should have rephrased that.
Not in Lafayette. I've had a meeting with the Planning Commission for a project, but there was no DRC meeting involved with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next question. What are the best and worst projects in downtown Lafayette and why? What about the residential areas of town?
Some of the best projects, I would say, as an urban designer, I feel like wherever we could contribute to creating places for people that they would be able to walk and come and, just making the city more vibrant. I see that as more of a successful project. I feel like the downtown area where, the mixed use for different programs, they would be able to accommodate people and support, the presence of people on the streets. Those are the areas that I like and I appreciate. And as an architect and also as a person who's been trained as an urban designer, I see single buildings design as well as the relationship between them. I think if you want to just create better places for people, we also need to look at how buildings are kind of interacting with each other and also with with our streets. Some of the worst developments that I would see is I think the grocery stores and the shopping, that they have these large surface parking areas facing the street. And I think we need to hold our street edge and give it as much as possible to the programs, so people would be able to use that as much as possible.
Thank you.
Great. So how would you, sorry, looking ahead, what do you see as Lafayette's biggest challenges, and what role do you see the Design Review Commission has in addressing them?
I think Lafayette being part of the Bay Area and with our housing shortage, that would be one of our future challenges. And approval of housing projects, I think it's going to be very critical. I'm a pro housing, but at the same time, I think that we need to value the design and make sure that the development would happen in right locations and with right amount of density and providing enough amenities for people. So I think that's a very fine line, that this is going to be one of our future challenges, but at the same time, being able to process or making the design process or decision-making process for the projects that they would contribute more rather than being just another, housing project built there. and adding to the difficulties or the problems that already exist.
Well,
Thank
can I
you.
just follow up on that, if I may? So right now, all of our new housing or density, high density, is planned to go into the downtown.
Right.
And so the question, I guess, is what do we need to do to accommodate that in a way that kind of keeps the values that you've expressed related to the vibrancy and the kind of connectivity?
Right.
What do we have to keep in mind going forward with
I
that?
think I think that's multifaceted. One would be thinking about a bigger picture that, how this housing project would be part of a mixed-use development. So, housing is part of that. It would be housing, it would be areas for, like open spaces. It would be the amount of retails. It would be transportation. It would be access to the public transportation. I think all of those, there are different parts of the puzzle that they need to go together. But at the same time, knowing that the downtown, it's closer to the BART, it's closer to our public transportation node, would be able to accommodate more housing. I think there are the parking ratio is one factor that we want to create housing, but it needs to be less dependent on cars. And given that our downtown is a perfect location for that, I think that would be something we need to consider. The other thing is the amount of open space. So for each unit, we need to make sure that development is providing both private and common open space, and whether our infrastructure in that specific location would be able to handle that much of density. That's the other question. So I think there are many parts of the this puzzle that they need to be thought comprehensively.
Okay. Describe your experience working as a member of a team. Provide examples of other committees you have served on that you feel worked effectively.
My day-to-day role as a project architect in the firm that I'm working, I work with a team of engineers, consultants, and for me, the success of my project is the having a successful interaction with my team, and about the it's kind of like understanding my own responsibilities and other people's responsibility, and how as a part of the team, I would just respect each other's people's responsibility. And the success of the work, I think, could be broken down to different parts. One would be the level of quality or skill set of those people, and the other thing would be how they could interact with each other as a committee member, or somebody who is part of the committee. I think it's more of interaction and hearing and understanding the problem and thinking towards the solution of how that problem could get solved, and how as one part of the team you could just discuss that solution with the other people. And just I think like everybody in the room is the smartest person in the room, so it's kind of like sharing your idea and your understanding with everybody and hearing them. I think that's the key to become a successful part of the team.
Thank you.
All right. Have you taken a position in public on any pending applications?
In Lafayette or in general?
Lafayette.
Yeah, Lafayette.
No.
Awesome.
So as you may know, certain new laws such as SB 35 and SB 330 are adjusting how the city may review a project and focusing on more objective standards. How do you see this affecting the ability of the city commissions to facilitate well-designed buildings?
Right. I think, again, going back to the affordable housing and the ratio of affordable housing, I think that's that's something that states mandates the planning commission and the planning department. I think there are two sides of it. One is that given the ratio that the developer is providing in terms of the amount of affordable housing, they could just request for waivers or concessions, and that would put planning commission in a maybe difficult position. But also as a I think again I would just go back to the previous question that there are many different pieces that they come together. Like if you're waiving like parking requirement for one building, it doesn't necessarily need to be a bad decision. It just needs to be seen as whether the infrastructure is able to afford or to accommodate that decision or not. I mean, it's in general, I think that's good because that helps the cities to provide more housing. But at the same time, I think that there has to be a process for reviewing those applications, approving the projects, that they don't waive issues that would create problem in the future.
Okay.
Okay.
So as a commissioner, you will be required to file annual statements with the Fair Political Practices Commission, disclosing any economic interest you have in the city. For example, this could involve disclosing all investments, business interests, and income received from business located in Lafayette. Are you comfortable with this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do you have the time to commit to both regular and special commission meetings? This includes serving on subcommittees and attending application review committee meetings.
Yes.
Do you have any questions for us?
No.
Okay. I just want to expand it. I appreciate your answer as a yes, but
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. You have a full-time job?
I do have a full-time job, but also my hours are flexible, and I'm able. So we have like 8 hours a day, but also I was also kind of like teaching at in San Francisco, and just setting up these training sessions. For the past few years, I've been able to make the work hours flexible, so I would be able to work on my interests and what I think would be necessary for me to do beside my job.
Okay, I just wanted you to understand, because that was a question when I'm on design review, when I was asked originally, and gave me some range of, I think it was 5 to 10 hours a week, and there's weeks that is shockingly low.
Right.
For what you'd really spend. Most of the time, I think it averages out. That I just wanted you to understand that. Right,
and being on like DRC meetings myself for my projects, I know that how it goes, and basically it's gonna it demands for reviewers or the people on the DRC committee to spend time and contribute their time. So I understand that.
Sorry, I needed to clarify that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Is there anything else you would like to share with us?
Not necessarily. Personally, I'm a firm advocate for sustainability and making projects more sustainable. In terms of and there are different facets of that, so environmentally, economically, and socially. So I do believe that that's very important for all the projects. And also I feel like my training as both urban designer and architect helped me to understand like buildings, that they are piece of a larger context. So I wouldn't focus on design of a single building. I would just try to see that in a larger context.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe we are done with our questions. So if you don't have anything more to say, then we will go. We will end this, and thank you for coming and applying.
It might be helpful to let him know what our time frame is for getting back to him.
Thank you.
Greg,
Yes.
maybe you or Sarah can do that? No?
Certainly hope to get back by the end of next week.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We appreciate
Thank
yours.
you.
Thank you.
Yes. So we're going to wait to talk until the end, correct?
Well, that was my sense, and we have a little time right now if you want to talk. Patrick,
Yes.
how are you feeling?
He seemed pretty good. I thought he was qualified.
Mhm.
He definitely has the qualifications. He said the right things.
Good.
So I
Yeah.
thought, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah. I same thing. I'm just, you know, I tend to try to wait a little bit until I see everybody, but he did
Right.
seem to say, he did seem very competent. That is for sure.
Yeah, I wasn't saying he was it. I was just saying
Perfect. Yeah.
take them one at a time. We'll see how they go.
Right.
Well, I appreciate the fact that he had the urban design context in what he was saying, which,
Yes.
you know, for us is probably one of the more important things. Whatever we get in the downtown, we want it all to add to a nice environment.
Mhm.
So I thought that was positive.
I think my only critique, in my opinion, of his answers were that they didn't really answer the questions. They were more general,
General. Yep.
talk about things, but not answer the question, which in an interview can be a negative.
100% agree.
Yeah.
So we are waiting on the next applicant to join the meeting.
So as a question, I guess, Sarah or Greg, was this the total pool of applicants, or are these whittled down, or?
I think it's the total pool, just the one person who had submitted but did not want to do an interview. So there were 6, and now I think we have 5.
Okay.
Thanks. And the person that didn't was Sherry or Cherry?
Correct. And then just to be clear, we're filling two vacancies,
Right.
Yes.
or hoping to.
Hoping to, correct. Thank you.
Certainly don't need to fill both if we don't find the candidates we're looking for, but that's the goal.
Good to know.
When would this person come in? When would we, if we tell them by next week, it'll be the next council meeting after that? Like the
So-
Monday?
Right, ideally then they would be at the 13th, May 13th. Ooh, sorry, I was keeping time.
Time is
We won't
up.
miss it. We will not miss that.
Whoa.
May 13th Design Review Commission meeting. Hopefully.
Super.
And certainly I think we can perhaps let them know before the end of next week, but just want to manage expectations.
That was very smart.
So I'm showing 4:26 and the agenda says 4:30 for the next candidate. So still
Right.
waiting on her to join the meeting. I'll advise when she's on.
Sure.
So Greg, you're maintaining a waiting room, right? Is that how you're kind of holding
Correct.
people?
Yep. And I will multitask while the next candidate is being interviewed. Listen to the responses, but also invite the next candidate to join and be in the waiting room a few minutes early for the next one.
Sounds good.
Figuring this out.
Right.
Kristen Finkus is joining.
All right, okay. Hello, Kristen.
Hi,
Oh,
how are you guys?
Sorry, excuse me,
Hi.
Kirsten, right?
You got
Kirsten.
it.
All right. Hey, well, thank you. Welcome. I'm Susan Candell. I'm the vice mayor. And Mike Anderson is on the call on the interview, and also Patrick Collins from the Design Review Commission. We do have some, staff members, Greg Wolf and Sarah Allen along the call. So welcome and thank you. This is the first ever set of interviews done virtually, I think, in the history of Lafayette. So thank you for putting up with this, and please be patient. We're all kind of learning how to do this. So, but thank you for attending and showing your interest.
Sure.
All right. So we have a series of questions, and we'll kind of we'll take turns asking you questions. So here we go. First one, please tell us about yourself, your professional background, your volunteer experience, and why you want to serve on this commission.
All right. If I can remember everything. So my background.
You can ask again too. You can ask too.
Sounds good. So I come from a design background. I have, since I've been little, have always had a passion for art and design. I ended up becoming and getting a design degree from UC Davis, and I graduated, I believe, in '99. And since then, I've been doing various roles in utilizing my my design skills. So the past, I would say, about 12 years or so.
You're breaking up a little bit. We're kind of losing you. Can you try that
Working
again?
at an advertising agency in San Francisco, and I manage a group of. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, it says my internet connection is unstable. Can you guys hear me?
It's been
Yeah.
cutting in and out a little bit. So yeah,
Okay, sorry about that.
no problem.
Yeah, just raise your hand if you guys see it cutting out, and I can restart. So recently I've been working at a company called Heat. They are a San Francisco based agency, and I run a department of 2 women, and I manage them, and we come up with brand look and feels for different clients. And we work with our New York office, our Seattle office. We do all different types of design. I'm obsessed with design. Ever since living in Lafayette, I've also, everything in my world is visual. So when I see new things being built around town, I'm concerned with, how is this going to look? Is it going to fit in with the current environment that we fell in love with? Everything down to the little nit gritty detail, colors of signs, the font that's being used. I mean, I do all of that in my career right now and have for the past 12, 15 years. So it's just something I'm really passionate about. And regarding volunteer experience, I don't have a ton of recent volunteer experience because I have 2 little kids at home, and I work full time, and my husband also works. So it's pretty busy household. But I love helping out when I can. A previous company that I worked for, also in San Francisco, we worked for, or we did a lot of volunteer work with a company called Code Tenderloin. And it helped people get back on skills. And we, oh, yep.
You just kind of broke up a little bit there.
After
Oh,
the
I'm so
code
sorry.
tenderloin, the start of the code tenderloin.
Yeah, so my past agency that I worked with or worked at, a company called Argonaut, we helped raise awareness for Code Tenderloin, and the company is all about helping people who are homeless get back on their feet and helping them learn how to code so they can get jobs out in the real world. And it was just an amazing organization to be a part of. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the other questions, but it might be helpful.
Why do you want to serve on the commission? So why do you want to serve?
I mean, sure. I feel like I've kind of already answered that. I have an obsession with design, everything about design. And I want everything to look as good as possible. And I want to be a proactive person in the town that I live in and help offer my skills and feedback.
So have you ever attended a Lafayette Design Review Commission meeting?
I have not. I have not actually had any time to physically make it. I currently, my company, even before the quarantine happened, I'm now allowed to work from home 4 days a week. So I have a little bit of extra time on my hands since I don't have to do the commute. So I'm hoping I can start getting a little bit more involved.
Okay, thank you.
All right. What are the best and worst projects in downtown Lafayette and why? And what about the residential areas of town?
Best and worst. And it has to be a residential?
No,
No.
the downtown area, and then also comments about residential area.
I mean, one project that made me pretty upset is the PG&E work that's happening down at the bottom of is that Olympic and Release Station Road?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love nature and I love trees and I love trying to keep as many trees as possible in the town of Lafayette. That's why my husband and I fell in love with the town. And when I see lots of trees being cut down just because it's the easy approach to go with, it makes me upset. So that would probably be one of the biggest projects that I had issues with in Lafayette. Let me think about the best one that I've seen. I usually like the projects that involve kind of refreshing an already existing building. So if we don't have to tear down a building and we can fix up an existing building, I'm usually pro that. I'm trying to think if there have been any in Lafayette that I've seen. What they did with the Cooperage, I thought was pretty cool. They took an existing building and kept the same stature, but fixed it up nicely. Trying to think.
I think we might have lost her. Have we lost you, Kirsten? Kirsten?
I'm going to go ahead and shut off her
Video.
Ooh.
She's gone.
So that,
She
yeah,
calls it, but we can give her that recommendation because that'll typically give her the bandwidth back.
righto. So we'll wait momentarily while she clicks the link again and rejoins.
So the problem may be that she just doesn't have enough capacity on her end. Is that
Yeah, that definitely happens.
okay?
But the video takes a lot of it. And so if you just cut down the video, then the voice is great.
We have a call-in number for this Zoom meeting anyway, right? You could just give her the call-in number and have her do it through her phone. And then there'd be no problem at all.
I'll send her a note as well that she can either choose to either option. She is back momentarily.
Welcome back. Hello.
Hi, I have no idea what happened there. I'm so sorry.
What you might want to do is turn your video off, and then we'll turn it back on at the end, but that'll give you some bandwidth, most likely.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right, so we were getting to the best and the worst projects and why, and you said the best ones the last one we heard was that you liked the coop and what they did to the coop, and that's where we lost you. And then we were asking about that, and what about the residential areas?
Residential areas. Can you guys provide any examples of residential areas that you're referring to?
And we're kind of thinking if you live in Lafayette, you drive around, is there something you said, wow, I really, really like that style of that neighborhood, or I really, really don't like that? That's kind of to hear what your opinions are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can necessarily pinpoint one particular area. I mean, I think multiple areas I've seen very nice things. I think things that blend in with the environment, things that blend in with current homes in the neighborhoods, things that don't stand out like a sore thumb. I always like architecture that kind of blends in with the environment. So, you know, incorporating trees, incorporating shrubs, you know, things that just really blend in, don't stand out.
Okay.
All right, so looking ahead, what do you see as Lafayette's biggest challenges, and what role do you see the Design Review Commission has in addressing them?
Yeah, so I think growth is a big issue amongst a lot of people who live within Lafayette. How can we provide housing but keep the same rural feel of Lafayette, the same character? I think we all love the small town aspect of Lafayette, and how can we do that but not allow other people to live here at the same time? So how is it that we can provide shelter but don't have it turn into a town like Walnut Creek with lots of, you know, apartment buildings everywhere, townhomes? It's a tricky subject because you don't want to exclude people, but at the same time, we want to keep the charm of the city intact.
Thank you.
Okay. Describe your experience working as a member of a team. Provide examples of other committees you have served on that you feel worked effectively.
Sure. So I manage a team at my current job at Heat, and I love collaborating. I love working as a team. We have to work with a whole bunch of different departments. We have to work with creative directors. We have to work with people across different offices across the US. So, you know, just making sure to communicate, making sure we're communicating clearly, making sure we're all working together and not against each other, and making sure we all understand whose role is what and how we can all contribute together as a team to get the best possible outcome.
Alrighty.
Okay, thank you.
I think you've probably already addressed this, but have you taken a position in public on any pending applications?
No, I have not.
Thank you.
And to make that clear, in Lafayette.
Sorry.
Oh, projects in Lafayette.
Nope, I have not.
Perfect. So as you know, certain new laws such as SB 35 and SB 330 are adjusting how the city may review a project and focusing more on objective standards. How do you see this affecting the ability of the city's commissions to facilitate well-designed buildings?
Is there any way I can have you repeat that question? It
Of
was kind
course.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. As you know, certain new laws such as SB 35 and SB 330 are adjusting how the city may review a project and focusing more on objective standards. How do you see this affecting the ability of the city's commissions to facilitate well-designed buildings?
So unfortunately, I don't know what SB 35 and SB, I don't remember the other number that you had
330,
provided
yeah.
actually mean.
So just to give you some help on this one is that these laws have come down and said that the city can't impose, our own design standards unless we've objectified them and made them not objective and not subjective. And so we are now in a very much more limited place where we can have an influence on design, just to give you that background. And so with this new, much leaner structure that gives us limitations, how do you think we should try to facilitate good design, even though we're limited in our impact?
So is it a funding thing necessarily, or is it, no? Okay.
No, it's the state laws don't allow us to make the applicant, come over to our subjective design standards. If they propose something that fits all of our objective standards, it has to be a certain, there's easements and, frontages and stuff like that. But if they fit all of those, literally we almost have no input on design. That's unfortunately the landscape that is coming out of San Francisco right now. And it's hard. And so so you have to work within that. And so do you have any ideas of how you would help us, work better in this environment?
I mean, I still think we all, or most people in Lafayette, have a common goal and interest, and we really do want things to have that same type of character. And how can we ensure, from a design perspective, how can we ensure that that design is going to be upheld? And I think being on the Planning Commission, on the Design Review Board, I feel like we need to ensure people that we are on their side, and we will be looking out for those things, and we will push as much as possible to retain that character as much as we can. So just making sure people know that, me personally, I would definitely 100% put everything I could into making sure that design standards were up to par. Yeah. Hopefully that answers that question.
So as a commissioner, you will be required to file annual statements with the Fair Political Practices Commission, disclosing any economic interest you have in the city. For example, this could involve disclosing all investments, business interests, and income received from businesses located in Lafayette. Are you comfortable with this?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, next question. Do you have the time to commit to both regular and special commission meetings? This includes serving on subcommittees and attending application review committee meetings.
I believe I would need to know in advance when these meetings are gonna be held, but yes, I should be able to make time for that.
Okay, so when I started on design review, I think they gave me an estimate of 5 to 10 hours a week.
Mhm.
I think in some cases that's probably a little low, depending on the workload that we have from week to week, but the meetings are bi-weekly and generally 2 or 3 hours a piece. Is that something that you can handle?
I would definitely need to talk this over with my husband because he will be watching our children during these times, but I'm sure he would be on board with watching them. Yes,
Thank you.
sure.
Great. So do you have any questions for us?
I would love to hear how long each of you has been a part of the city and what things you all like as being part of these roles. And yeah, we can just start from there.
All right, I'm here. I'm the newbie. Been here, elected 2 years ago. Not even 2 years ago, and so I'm just brand new. So my answer is very short, but I love it.
Cool.
Go to the old guy from there. The guy
No,
that's
the
been around
young
the
guy.
longest.
We'll go to the young guy.
So I've been on design review for 3.5 years. I've been in Lafayette since 2013. I came out here because I just love it out here, and I built a house and thought the process needed a little help, so I worked my way out to the design review, and happy to be on it.
Cool.
And I first was on the planning commission for 4 years and I was elected to city council 16 years ago. So been on the city council for 16 years. And I think that the issues that we tried to kind of probe at today with you are concerned about how we maintain the character that we've all fallen in love with, given the pressure to do more development. So that's why those questions were all kind of shaded toward getting your sense of how those things could be done. But that's the big challenge right now for us, to try to keep the great place that we have here.
Yeah. Great.
So is there anything else you would like to share with us?
I just want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to meet, and I apologize for my terrible Wi-Fi. But I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys think about me, and if there are any other questions that I can help answer that I didn't answer on the call, I'm more than happy to answer those. So just reach out.
Okay, will do. All right, so Sarah, you want to tell her what to expect from us?
So we'll definitely reach out by the end of next week and let you know the decision.
Perfect. Thank you
Great.
all for your time.
And absolutely, thank you for
Thank you.
offering up your time and volunteering for this position. It's just terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, bye. I can't tell you how many people at my work where we've just had to shut their videos down. You just can't, at your home, you're not ready for the bandwidth a lot of times.
So my phone is showing 4:51, so we're a few minutes ahead of schedule.
That's great. This is working out just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll offer you can take a 5-minute recess and then reconvene at 4:55, and we'll by that time I believe have the next candidate on, or we can stay in session. Your choice.
Real quick, do you want to have some just quick impressions like we did last time?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. I think she's young and optimistic and would be a hell of a designer. I mean, I think that she would be fun to work on there. Is she qualified and ready? I'm not quite sure, but she sort of seems, smart enough and would be a great designer.
Well, this is the thing I've found that's so interesting about these interviews is that you'll get people who don't quite understand exactly what the commission does because they really never have gone to any of the meetings, but they have a great intent of helping. And there's certain words in the title that sound like something they've done, so why not? And there's a lot of good intent there, and I love it. That's great, but I can't see her being anywhere near ready for design review commission. It's way beyond her, and then she can't even read the plans from what I can tell. Go ahead, Patrick.
I kind of agree with both of you. I felt that she was really positive. She had a lot of design inspiration, but when you pushed her or asked her about design, she talked about trees. She talked about more generic things that as she grows, she'll expand her experience and really probably end up being a really great contributor. But I was also concerned that she doesn't really understand the time commitment and the amount of time, especially if you don't have the understanding of, you know, paging through documents and understanding what a project entails. If you don't have that experience, it'd take you a lot longer to figure out what a project looks like from a two-dimensional model, and the time commitment would actually be a lot more than someone who is experienced. So that for me is the biggest. I loved how positive she was. I'm concerned that the time would be too much and the experience would probably be a little too low.
Well, what's one of the things you often find out is there may be other commissions or committees that someone would serve well on. And I would think public art, she'd be a great public art commissioner or could contribute quite a bit, because often they're focused really more on design aspect, aesthetic aspect, and it's fitting in with the environment. So that might be something we want to
Encourage
get back
her.
to her some feedback. Take a look at that.
And probably less of a time commitment right now, you know, and then you
Mhm.
can learn about Lafayette and how we run, and right.
Yeah.
And there's openings. Yeah, there are. I think.
Well, I think she's got her application already made out. Just need to check the box.
I am going to take a quick break. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, I can't say that I like this process compared to being face to face. This is a little stilted.
Yeah. Definitely not the best.
No. Patrick, have you guys had design review commission meetings on Zoom yet?
I didn't have the internet in my house because AT&T crapped out on me the last time, so we didn't have a quorum.
Wow.
So we haven't had one yet, and I guess we're going to have one next Wednesday. We're going to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's different, really different.
I'm familiar with the Zoom, Blue Jean, whatever interface. We use it a lot for work, but it's, you know, that works different.
Yep, I agree.
So Jonathan Gray is your next candidate,
Yep.
and he's slated for 5 o'clock. It's about 4 or 5 minutes out.
Yeah, we have some time.
So we'll anticipate him shortly. I did get confirmation from the candidate following him, Mr. Kirsch, that he'll log on to the meeting and be in the waiting room as of 5:15. So if we're running a little bit early, at that point, we potentially could go ahead and take him early, and I'll work on getting the last candidate confirmed to be on early as well.
Okay.
admitting John Gray now.
Hello, John. Hello?
It usually takes a moment or
Okay, good, good.
two for the audio to connect. So I think now you should be good.
Hello, John.
Hi,
How are you?
Howdy.
So is it John or Jonathan? Which one would you like?
I go by John. My
Great.
mom sometimes calls me Jonathan.
Fair. So welcome to clearly our first set of virtual interviews, no doubt in Lafayette history. So thank you for understanding and working with us on this.
We have all gotten used to this last month.
Yes, we have. Maybe not used to it, but we're doing it. Yes.
I'm used to it.
Oh, good for you. Yes. So first off, I introduce myself. I'm Susan Candell. I'm the vice mayor. And we have Mike Anderson, the mayor, who's also here. And then Patrick Collins,
Yeah.
who's from the Design Review Commission. We will take turns asking you questions, and please, answer as honestly and take, as much time as you think is needed for each question. Okay, first off, please tell us about yourself, your professional background, your volunteer experience, and why you want to serve on this commission.
Okay, so I have been an architect practicing in the Bay Area, and now I think I just hit 30 years, which I sort of can't believe. I moved out here when I finished school back east, lived in San Francisco, rode Loma Prieta in an office on the Embarcadero. I didn't know better. I looked out the window, cowering in my cubicle where everybody else was under their desks. I wasn't going to put my head in the sand when I could watch how buildings move. So that was exciting. I moved. So anyway, I've been practicing architecture largely in healthcare, in university work. With the I did a stint during .com in data centers and critical facilities. And I've been working now in an East Bay firm in Emeryville for not quite a year. A significant client of mine is John Muir Health nearby. Working for my community hospital is something I found very gratifying. My family and I moved out here when my kids started, in time for my kids to start kindergarten in beautiful Lafayette. We had lived in Oakland prior to that. And so we've been here now 11 years, and it's just been a great place. We really like it. My volunteer experience. So I'm kind of getting back into the idea of volunteer experience now as my kids are in high school and I'm starting to feel like they're getting a little more self-sufficient. Before my kids were born, I spent about 5 years on the board of directors for the American Youth Hostels, the regional council that includes the hostels in Northern California. And as the architect in the group, I was on for my buildings and facilities expertise, but I was still part of the governing body. And it was a great experience. They were really great people dedicated to a mission, which is one of promoting understanding among internationals, just for making the world a little smaller. So that was a great experience. My family and I have gone out to the food bank out on the other side of Concord. My kids aren't thrilled with that, but it's a good thing to do. We don't have the nerve to do it with the COVID business going on. I've got family members who we want to be sure are way away from that. But anyway, I feel it's time to get back into it. And if there's a volunteer opportunity that overlaps with my interest and expertise, like this May, I would be really interested. Did I catch everything there?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
So John, have you actually ever attended a Lafayette Design Review Commission meeting?
I have, not many, but I live up the hill from the old Celia's property, you know where Dolores is. And our neighborhood got quite interested in that project, as I'm sure you all remember. I went to a design review meeting and a circulation commission meeting. Circulation was my big concern on that one. And I appreciate that you and the city determined that they were going to change the way the vehicle entrance worked on that site. The opinion that I voiced is if they felt that was the only way to go, to have all their traffic go onto the little side street that my neighborhood feeds through, that the street really needed another lane of traffic because it stacks up there in morning rush hour just the way it is right now. And it would add about another third of residents likely spiking in the commute hours. So anyway, I was pleased with the way that worked out, and can't believe it's taken so long to build the darn thing, but
That's a different story.
No comments.
So I do want to know, did you have any impressions of the Design Review Commission at work? What you witnessed there? What did you think?
You know, what my impression of what the Design Review Committee does, and I certainly look forward to having the opportunity to learn more. It's a difficult balance to apply what is your own judgment compared to what are well understood, more objective criteria. Something that a person who is proposing a development should be able to have an understanding of and comply with. I would say that at the time that I was at those meetings, I was not as well educated in your design guidelines as I am now. And by the way, I was fairly impressed with the downtown design guidelines, especially. They are quite comprehensive, and I can see where the newer developments are positively influenced by what has been written there. So, I guess it'll be a question for you. Is that a good enough tool that your applicants can understand what's expected of them, and that you all can then use that as a basis for review and some sort of objective input? There's a lot of line items in there, and there's room for interpretation.
Thank you.
Going to be a later question, but while we're on this one, what are the best and worst projects in downtown Lafayette and why? And what about residential areas in town?
Well, so there's one project that has always kind of bothered me. And I'm sure there's a history, so I don't mean for this to be taken in a critical way. I would like to understand why the heck it ended up like this. The fresh connection on Mount Diablo Boulevard on the west side of town is a 3-story building slammed right against the sidewalk with a cliff-like facade and I would like to understand what the influences were that made that, what the balance was in that project that made you all decide that it was going to be okay to be like that.
It was before my time. Sorry.
Mine too.
Not going to be able to help you with that one. I kind of agree.
So that is, it's the materiality and some of the detailing has a nice quality to it, but the massing as a choice that was made for that part of town, I just never understood.
So I don't think you're going to get the answer to your question, but that's a good one. I've got it written down. What's on the best side of your equation?
Well, so a couple of things. There is a section of Mount Diablo Boulevard on the west side of downtown that is just like a perfect little main street. I guess it's from about Dewing to Oak Hill, and it's got a well-formed sense of street. It's got the kind of variety that the downtown guidelines really talk about, balancing variety with a sense of collective identity. I think that is a really successful piece of development, and that gives our town that's our main street, and that's if you're going to think what is the identity of Lafayette and what would you like to see more of in the commercial area. To me, that's it. There is a housing project right by BART, right next to the small BART parking lot. That's a fairly sizable housing project that I was very skeptical about. But you know something? It turned out nice. It is tucked way back there. It is not really, really visible from the street. Even from the BART side, it's very well screened by the kind of overgrown sense of what the landscape is there. It's got a warmth and a quality of material. So I would say I was, positively surprised at the way a very substantial scale residential project was kind of quietly integrated right into the middle of everything. So I would say that's a positive example in my view. Neighborhoods character. I live in a part of Lafayette where it's sort of middle-sized custom homes with a variety of character, and most of the houses, are pretty nice. Nothing super fancy where I live. There are different characters of neighborhoods. I think, we are fortunate that in an area where people value the quality of the environment and where there is affluence and people choose to devote resources to nice homes. I think we've got a pretty nice housing here. There's one house in my neighborhood that seems that was recently bulldozed and rebuilt that I would say seems a little out of scale with everything, but it's kind of tucked away and I wouldn't say it's super obtrusive. But if you, sort of look down the long driveway, it's 3 times the size of anything else around, and it does seem a little curious. Anything else good and bad? I'm not sure I would say this is a design criticism, but there's one property that I never really understood the developer decision at the Pleasant Hill Road exit of 24. Right, basically, it feels like it's inside a cloverleaf, is this multifamily residential unit that, I wouldn't say it's offensive to me as a driver driving by it, but I can't imagine anybody would want to live there in the middle of that cloverleaf, and it does seem like a sort of a strange piece of land use right there. But I'm sure there's history to all these things that you know much more about than I do. So anyway, does that answer the question?
That's it. All right. So looking ahead, what do you see as Lafayette's biggest challenges, and what role do you see the Design Review Commission has in addressing them?
Well, Lafayette has suffered controversy on growth versus preservation for many years, and it's been worst, of course, when the economy is best. So who knows? That may slow down. We'll see. But there is housing pressure, and there's legislative teeth behind that. And I've been at public meetings where Mayor Tazin, am I saying his name right?
Tatson. Yeah.
So 2 mayors ago, maybe, was sharing with a group that we really don't have the choice to say no to residential development, for our town anyway, high density residential development. And that's a challenge for us, and that's a challenge for those of us who may be thinking about how to manage it. I think that there are a lot of Lafayette residents who just flat out oppose it, and you're just not going to get buy-in no matter what you do. But this is not just our backyard. This is part of a region, and these growth decisions are, we can't close our borders. It just doesn't work. So how does, a lot of this is more planning decisions than design review decisions, I would think. But in terms of design review, I think it's about mitigation. There are going to be impacts to the scale of projects that can be mitigated. And I would say if the Design Review Commission had positive influence on the project that I mentioned, the large housing project near BART, then I would say mitigating the visual and other environmental impacts of a project that might be difficult for residents to deal with the impacts of. Seems like what the Design Review Committee should be there for. In addition, of course, to supporting the other design goals as outlined in the guidelines.
Thank you.
John, describe your experience working as a member of a team provide examples of other committees you have served on that you feel worked effectively.
Well, I'm an architect and typically a team leader. I've been a project manager and more recently principal in charge, running design teams. And that team size can vary to 2-3 people. Largest projects I've run have been new hospital buildings with a team of 30 architects and an equal sized group of engineers working as in consulting companies. Nobody, I mean, if I'm the team leader, that doesn't mean that I have any hope or prayer of doing it myself. And I don't have the full skill set, and I'm not supposed to. If I'm surrounded by good people with similar mindset, and if I can help align goals and then, also help structure tasks and work plans, it works best when, my experts, everybody I work with, in fact, are self-directed, working toward the same goal. And I've been very fortunate to have worked with wonderful people as I am today, in my work. And it is very gratifying to accomplish something together as a group that none of us could have done by ourselves. So I have been a successful team leader in my career and have, I would say, risen in team leadership as what I do professionally. My other experience, which I mentioned earlier, was my role on the board of directors at the Bay Area youth hostels. And that was quite different, in a governance role versus in an execution role, in a leadership execution role. It was a very diverse group, which made it a lot of fun. I didn't have the same, as a team leader, at some point I have authority, which hopefully I don't, I'm not an iron hand in any way. On a board situation, we tended to want to be consensus driven. You want some level of buy-in on a team that you lead regardless. But when you're in a consensus driven group, it's different. You're not just going to say your piece and fold your arms. You have to come to some kind of agreement together. And sometimes you may agree that, I'm going to let something go because, it's just, we're not going to hit consensus if I hold on to it. I think the board of directors at the youth hostels worked that way, that sometimes we let things go. Sometimes, we were all behind something 100%. We relied on our executive director mostly. It was rare that the board said, you need to change your course. She was very highly qualified and competent. I think that was a successful group as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have you taken a position in public on any pending applications in Lafayette?
Well, by position, you mean, do I support it or do I oppose it, or something of finer grain? Finer grain, I did make a statement to the Circulation Commission regarding the Lennar property at the Celia site, where I stated my preference on a circulation decision. But I didn't oppose the project. I don't oppose the project.
That's not pending anymore.
And it wasn't pending, right? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the key, which is good.
Yeah.
I think but was it pending at the time the Circulation Commission was reviewing it, or was
Oh,
it already
absolutely. But right now it's not.
right?
Yeah.
It's just pending getting out of the ground.
Yes.
All right. As you know, certain new laws such as SB 35 and SB 330 are adjusting how the city may review a project and focusing more on objective standards. How do you see this affecting the ability of the city's commissions to facilitate well-designed buildings?
Well, so we touched on this a little
We
bit
did.
earlier. The fact that the city has done, what looks to me as a great job in defining some objective criteria seems like the biggest possible step there, which is not to say that, you can just apply it and say, yes, 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 no, no, yes. But the creation and then application of objective criteria is the only way, right? So where does judgment come in? I know that in the meetings that I've heard, I've heard statements by commissioners that have come across as, their expert design opinion. And it's, and I may have agreed with it, but it wasn't clear to me, and it wasn't necessarily tied to, the guidelines. The goals of the guidelines are this, the specifics of the guidelines are that, and on that basis, we would like you to do this. So I guess a question I would have is, do you feel? I mean, the downtown guidelines are about 7 years old now. Have you been using them in the way that you think this legislation intends? Have you been having pushback from applicants because they feel your process is not objective enough?
Right, absolutely. The totally good questions. We did come up with some new objective design standards, right? Greg, are those done? Those were mostly, or Sarah?
The phase 1 objective standards, downtown objective standards are done. And we anticipate a phase 2.
There was a document that that I was provided with that was, I think, just a little 2-pager, maybe 3. Is that what you're talking about? That talks about specific site edge amenities that a project could get either required or points or that kind of thing.
Yes.
So that does seem, a little finer edged objective, although I thought that your downtown plan was fairly objective.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The hillside housing plan, which of course goes back a number of years, and kind of takes me back, it seems for its day to have been very enlightened. The just ridgeline development. I did a project in the coastal zone, and if any of you have ever worked in the coastal zone, it is one crazy microscope. But you don't want to screw it up because you've got one coastline, right? So we sort of understood it. But I built a project on the Monterey coast, and it was a project that everybody supported, and it was on a low ridgeline. And oh man, we did the best we could do to get over the hill, but we would end up on a slippery slope, literally. It's difficult. Lafayette is a hilly place, and there are ridges everywhere, and it's going to really restrict somebody's ability to use their land. And how do you balance that? So, I mean, I don't have the answer. I look forward to learning more about it.
Okay, well then, as a commissioner, you'll be required to file annual statements with the Fair Political Practices Commission, disclosing any economic interest you have in the city. For example, this could involve disclosing all investments, business interests, and income received from businesses located in Lafayette. Are you comfortable with this?
Yeah, no problem.
Excellent, thank you.
Do you have the time to commit to both regular and special commission meetings? This includes serving on subcommittees and attending application review committee meetings.
Well, I think so. Sarah, when you and I were in communication, when I first became aware that this position was open, I believe you told me through email that it was two meetings a month, or was it every other week for 2 or 3 hours on an evening. That is manageable for me. That's just fine. I suspect as long as we're outside business hours, I'm willing to make a commitment that this would be a priority for me.
Thank you.
So do you have any questions for us?
Well, I'm curious what you see the Design Review Commission's biggest challenges today. Oh, hang on one second. I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Let me just make sure that nobody thinks it's still business hours for me. Hopefully not. Let me just shut something down here. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think that you actually touched on many of the issues that design review is focused on. And I liked your sense of a need for mitigation. I mean, that's the right word, I think, that when we get to design review, beyond planning, there's the mitigation of those actual impacts that are coming our direction because of statutory requirements. We just can't do anything about it. So
That's right.
it's well placed. And Patrick, maybe you can fill in because you're chairing right now the Design Review Commission. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what the biggest issue is, and how we can take these new rules and still blend them, or as much as possible, blend them into what we still see as a vision for the city. And that's where the phase 1 and phase 2 of the objective standards. So we actually have a tool to say, this is what you need to do. And if we don't have that, minus that, they can build whatever they want. And that could be really, really bad, in my opinion, for the future of Lafayette. So.
Thank you. Let me also ask, if I may, another question. To what, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that was a time warning.
Yes.
Yeah, we have 1 minute, so
Yes.
you can ask it quickly.
Gosh,
we'll try to get
sorry.
you an answer.
And
Right.
we'll charge you half
How
rate.
do you
We'll charge you
deal
half
with
rate for the answer.
How do you deal with internal disagreement within the commission?
Patrick.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. You kind of touched on it. It's about consensus, and a lot of our meetings, we all pass, reject, whatever, everything unanimously. But in several occasions, there is an outlier, or maybe it's 2 to 3 in some cases, but it's the majority decision. So that's how it's done. We vote, and that's how it happens. And for the most part, we're like-minded, but there definitely have been cases where we don't agree at all, and that's when majority rules.
Mhm.
So.
All right, well then I should let you go. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. And I think
Absolutely.
the only thing we need is just kind of clarification on when we'll be getting back to John. So Sarah, you can give him the.
So we'll let you know by the end of next week, our decision.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
Thanks, Jen.
for offering your time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So Greg Kirsch is the next candidate. If you want to move ahead, I can admit him.
Take a really quick, summary. He's
Sure.
dynamite.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that guy at all. I think
Not at
he's
all.
perfect. Yeah.
I think he's the exact thing you're looking for.
He's,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Unanimous.
Yay!
Yay.
Woohoo!
Okay, we'll go ahead and Mr. Kirsch is joining us. So-
Yes, I see you. Do you see me?
We got a
Not-
great
you're not
picture of you in a
live.
cowboy hat.
There we go.
There he is.
There he is.
Oh, Greg, thank you so much for joining us in our first ever Lafayette virtual interviews. So we're working through this, and we may stumble on things, and sometimes connections get funny, but we'll definitely get through it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank goodness for Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm Susan Kendall. I'm the vice mayor. We're also here with Mike Anderson, the mayor, and then Patrick Collins, the chair of the design review. So those are people who are interviewing you. We're going to take turns asking you questions, and take as long as you need for each of them, please.
Great.
Great. So first off, please tell us about yourself, your professional background, your volunteer experience, and why you want to serve on the commission.
Okay, great. I guess a little bit of a oral resume. And I'll try to hit on things that I think obviously are relevant to Design Review Commission. In 1980, I graduated from Harvard. I studied in the Department of Visual and Environmental Studies, which is sort of a design undergraduate. Back then, the term environmental did not mean ecology. It was about the built environment, the man-made environment. I wanted to be an architect back then, but I learned how hard it was to get a job, and kind of the career took different twists and turns from there. I went to work for Marriott Corporation in Washington in hotel development, got exposure to kind of big scale real estate development at that point. I got an MBA while I was doing that, so I have a background in business and finance. Sometime after that, I ended up acquiring a construction company involved in site work and earth moving and ready-mix concrete. And as the owner, I was involved in bidding on high school and other public projects, got familiar with blueprints and understanding design documents, estimating takeoff and so forth. For reasons that I won't go into now, I decided to leave that profession and go to law school in my mid-30s, and which is kind of unusual. Graduated from University of Virginia in law and moved to my wife's hometown in New Hampshire and worked in a small general law practice. After about 5 years, I joined my best client, which was a design build construction company. I was going to head up a development wing for them and to handle all of their entitlements, permitting processes. And so at that point, I started appearing very regularly before boards like yourself, like your board, planning boards in both small towns and cities as large as Portland, Maine. Extremely varying degrees of professionalism and staff involvement and so forth. You're very professional here compared to New Hampshire generally, I would say. My wife and I moved here permanently at the start of 2019, but we had owned this house here on Happy Valley Road since 2012, and we were spending half of the year here while I sort of wound down what I was doing in New Hampshire in real estate. And so we're homeowners and taxpayers since 2012. My wife grew up in this area. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law live in Lafayette. So we've been familiar with Lafayette, spending time here for at least a decade before we started moving here. So I have a little bit of sense of how things have changed and not changed over about a 15 to 20 year period. My volunteer experience has been sadly somewhat limited. I was a planning board member in the town of Naples, Maine in my late 20s and early 30s, relatively young in my career. While I was a lawyer, my volunteer work was pro bono cases that I would take through the New Hampshire Bar Association. I feel that now that I'm retired, I'd like to give back and serve in a way, and if that can be in a way that takes advantage of my experience and skill set, I think that's probably would be a good thing. And that's why I thought this would be a nice fit to try to not just do something, but do something that I think I have a head start on understanding what's involved with.
Thank you.
Let me turn it back to all of you.
Okay. So Greg, have you ever attended a Lafayette Design Review Commission meeting?
I have not, no.
Okay, thank you.
What are the best and worst projects in downtown Lafayette, in your opinion, and why? And what about the residential areas of town?
Okay, great question. I'll have to think about it off the cuff. And I would say that projects that I've been aware of that would have gone through the process would have been the mixed use building that I think has either assisted living or perhaps it's memory impaired space above the food bowls business.
Merrill Gardens,
Yeah.
right?
How would you describe that?
Yep, it's the Merrill Gardens, yeah.
Yes, the Merritt Gardens. So I guess I've walked by that a lot of times and thought that's similar to projects I've worked on, retail on the first floor. I've done hotels and housing on upper floors. A lot of things I liked about it. And in some ways, I feel like it might be best and worst. I really like the open space. I like the fountain and the massing sort of feel. I am really perplexed by the choice of the brick pattern and the texture that I think the building has. However, I fully realize that that's a personal aesthetic judgment. I don't think it's anything that you could pull out of the design review guidelines and fault the project for that. I feel as a lawyer, I would be able to distinguish between a project that meets the guidelines and the purposes of the ordinance, and then set aside personal feelings about color, taste, pattern, and the bricks that I don't like. So as I ramble, I hope it'll tell you something about me rather than this truly being a ranking of good and bad projects. I try to think of a newish project that I really think is bad, and I don't really have anything that comes to mind. I've been really aware of the new Chase Bank on the corner of Mount Diablo and Dewing. And it almost sounds like I have a problem with brick patterns, but I sort of feel the same way about that one as well. And that might be some baggage that I bring back from New England, where brick tends to be more old school looking brick and not so many different colors of brick. But I fully realize how irrelevant it is for me to go on and on about brick at this point. So I might stop there while you're in a hole, stop digging, as they say.
You're not in a hole.
Yeah.
You're not in a hole.
Yeah.
All right. Looking ahead, what do you see as Lafayette's biggest challenges, and what role do you see the Design Review Commission has in addressing them?
Oh, and I'll jump into that. I didn't answer anything about the residential.
Residential,
area.
I was wondering, okay, yeah.
So,
okay, you can go back.
I guess I'm most familiar with my part of town. I'm a really avid walker with my wife, and we are almost obnoxious in our poking our nose in houses that are being built and looking at the ribbons and pipes that are set up and talking about siding and so forth. I think that this part of town that we pay most attention to obviously is very, very high-end housing, and they're able to hire a lot of help that they need to deal with design issues. And I think by and large things get really well done. Again, I have some taste issues. I like things that are less ornate, more simple lines. But I think that the commission seems to do a good job with keeping things in scale and not perching them on top of a hill and so forth. I guess my understanding is that the Design Review Commission would not review homes that are less than 17 feet in height, and that must drive a lot of developers to stay under 17 feet. And I guess I don't understand historically what role that has played in the way most neighborhoods have low-rise houses and more ranch styles, which I feel is more typical for what I see around Lafayette. And I take it those don't go through the design process. So in a way, I guess it's the grand houses or those people that feel like taking on the design review process. Maybe I misunderstand the DRC's role in residential review if it's, but my feeling is it's only for the sort of the mansion type properties. The biggest challenge, I think, is for Lafayette, is staying out of the New York Times and having books written about Lafayette as a poster child for the problems with growth and the need for housing. I guess I feel that the challenge is going to be the tension for people who love Lafayette for what it is, without too much population growth and a lot of wonderful places to live for those with the means to acquire expensive housing. Yet it seems that historically Lafayette has lots of apartments and rental housing in its downtown, in the designated area. I wish more people understood that Lafayette has that. I bet it's very difficult to economically afford to develop any more housing in multifamily housing in that zone. That would be anywhere close to affordable. And I think that challenge exists, how to, what role there is for loosening standards and loosening review processes to both reduce costs that are incurred just dealing with those processes and to allow development that perhaps doesn't meet the highest level of design standards. Philosophically, I feel that a property owner, if a property owner meets all of the legal guidelines, I feel that they have a right to pursue and build their project. And that I think it can be difficult for a town to not look for reasons to turn something down because they don't want it. And I think training as a lawyer would help me to see the difference between, do I like something, do I want something, or does it meet all the requirements of the law, even if it is unpopular that something gets approved. I believe the law has to be changed, the ordinance has to be changed, and we can't substitute our own judgments for that legal process.
Thank you.
Okay. Describe your experience working as a member of a team. Provide examples of other committees you have served on that you feel worked effectively.
Okay. I sat on the board of directors of a small 80-bed rural hospital in Maine, again, at a time that I was fairly young in my life. And it was a challenge for me at that time, being sort of the young whippersnapper and new to town, but I was asked to serve on this hospital board of directors because there was a perception that I brought an understanding of finance and law background, yet it was I was ahead of my years, and I felt some tension, and I wasn't a sort of big financial supporter of the hospital. And the challenge at that time was for me to find some patience to work with people that didn't necessarily understand how to read the financial statement or understand the financial implications of the regulatory environment that that hospital was facing, and realized that my role in that setting was to try to be an interpreter or an explainer from using my educational background and experience to lay out in perhaps more understandable terms why I thought certain decisions should be made a particular way. Kind of a pretty general description of that. I would say that in more in the design and land use field, I enjoyed working with professional teams that consisted of an architect, a civil engineer, and myself, which was our typical group that would go to planning board meetings for the projects that my company would permit. And by the way, I want to say about 80% of our work was for other developers. It was largely in hotels and downtown urban hotels. And about 20% of the work I did for the owners of our company, of which I was able to participate. My bonus program, so to speak, was participating in the ownership of these projects. So I would work in a team environment with investors, an architect, civil engineer, to starting with the land acquisition process, which was my responsibility to find sites that could be redeveloped, take that through environmental review, both for hazardous waste issues and all of the required environmental impact studies. Primarily my work was in the state of Maine and the Portland area. And there was always I was on the opposite side from your commission to an extent, in that I was seeking a permit rather than evaluating, but by the same token, it was apparent that if we were going to succeed, if I was going to continue to earn my salary, we had to get things done and work in sort of the impromptu team environment of a staff planner. I would say that we never felt like we were on a team with the planning board members, so to speak, but much more with the staff, working with them in the background to try to understand, for example, how Portland, Maine design review standards or transportation plan would work with our hotel project. And as the leader and sort of the lawyer for that team, work with the, say, a traffic engineer and a parking consultant, right through to historic resource consultants, to both comply with the law, but do so, comply with the law, get the permit, but do so in a way that was also economically feasible, which took a lot of give and take in every direction. There were clearly tensions between giving staff and a planning board or a design commission everything they wanted, and making a project work financially. I understand that give and take, and I think that design review or planning commission will be most successful feeling in a way that they're on the same team as developers that come and sit before you. They ultimately all do have the same objective of a nice, successful building going up in your town. On the other hand, the developer has a set of concerns that aren't yours, the economic concerns. But if projects don't get built, if an eyesore lot doesn't get redeveloped because it can't get done economically, I think the town gets hurt that way as well. So through the course of my little rambling here, I kind of invented a new definition of team, being the team that consists of the people who have the power to grant the permit and the people that are seeking the permit to try to see if they can reach ultimately the same objective, a nice building that gets built that is affordable enough to work and not go out of business in your town.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have you taken a position in public on any pending applications in Lafayette?
No, I'm kind of a real blank slate in Lafayette. I've had a lot of discussions with people around the dinner table about Deer Hill Road and the terraces. My brother-in-law, who I visit, lives over in Release Valley, and we drive Deer Hill Road all the time at 5:30 and 6 o'clock. I also drive once a week to Martinez, same kind of back way over Deer Hill Road to where my band practices. And so that project's really on my mind, but certainly no public positions. And I see lots of complexity in that issue. It may not be a design review issue at this point. It might all be planning and appeals and legal issues, but I guess it's really only the most newsworthy project that I've followed pretty closely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As you may know, certain new laws such as SB 35 and SB 330 are adjusting how the city may review a project and focusing more on objective standards. How do you see this affecting the ability of the city's commissions to facilitate well-designed buildings?
So I am a believer in objective standards, but that can only go so far. Obviously, on the one extreme, you have dimensional sort of standards, and I am assuming that by and large, that's not the purview of the DRC. It'll be, staff review for compliance with zoning and planning board requirements. And I am not familiar with how much tension might exist between these new statutory regimes and the existence of a more judgment-based design review process. I would say that if more objective-based standards require that the DRC has to more specifically articulate how they apply their judgment within the framework or context of a standard, I by and large think that's a good thing, but it'll certainly slow down the process, create maybe more avenues for appeal, and certainly won't make things easier. And I guess if I'm not on the committee, I feel bad. On the commission, I feel sorry for you. Life's probably going to get harder, and if I'm on the commission, I'm going to feel sorry for myself. But maybe I won't look back on the good old days, and we could just say what we liked. I'd probably kind of expect that it's going to get more standards based.
Okay, thank you.
As a commissioner, you'll be required to file annual statements with the Fair Political Practices Commission, disclosing any economic interest you have in the city. For example, this could involve disclosing all investments, business interests, and income received from businesses located in Lafayette. Are you comfortable with this?
Yes, I am. This could be difficult for me if in other places where I've lived and built projects, and I do have some remaining real estate investments. They're 100% in the Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts area. And I'm also kind of crystal clean in terms of even knowing any business owners around Lafayette. So, on the one hand, maybe it would be good if I'd been around longer in a stronger part of the community working with other businesses, but I've never practiced law here. I've never been in construction development or any design related work in the state of California for that matter. So I'll have no issues with that.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have time to commit to both regular and special commission meetings? This includes serving on subcommittees and attending application review committee meetings.
Okay, well, that's a good one. I probably need to learn a little bit more about the frequency of non-scheduled meetings. Best I can tell, you've got the twice a month, looks like Mondays, and I'm not sure how that varies, whether it's second and fourth Mondays, maybe something of that nature.
Yes. Yes.
And so that I understand, and I certainly understand that there'd be a certain amount of field visits from time to time, I would think, but maybe not. Subcommittees and other review applications, I probably shouldn't speak until I was able to maybe hear a little bit more from you about exactly what the typical workload is. Having said that, I am fully retired. I can walk to the city offices, and so it's not can I guess, am I willing and able to put in all that time.
Great. So I think we've got, are we out of time or almost, or?
It is right at time, but if you just want to wrap up.
Okay, so we are out of time, right? Yes. Okay, thank you. Hey, thank you so much for coming, John, and I very much appreciate you coming. And so Sarah will tell you what is our timeline to getting back to you.
That sounds great. Thank you for all your time and all you do for the city of Lafayette. Pleasure to meet you all this way. Take care. Bye.
Nice to meet you, Greg. We'll let you know by the end of next week.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. There are 2 vacancies to be filled. Is that correct?
That's true.
Yes.
Okay, very good. And if I'll save any further detailed questions for the next step in the process, if that happens. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So our next candidate is ready when you are.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a couple minutes, yeah. So real briefly, I'll take any comments.
Well, I don't really think that he would be a good candidate. I appreciate his expertise and background, but his ability to kind of gel on an actual opinion or answer the questions, it was just a lot of rambling and a lot of just unfocused discussion. And in a commission situation, you really don't want that. You like people to be a little more direct so you can have some back and forth, you can get a decision made. So personally, I would not rank him very high.
I'm going to agree with that too. My biggest concern wasn't really his expertise. It was that he didn't get to his point. He moved around, and I mean, maybe that's a lawyer background where he wants to talk about all the different points or angles of something, but that doesn't work in a commission.
Right.
We don't need someone to pontificate for 15 minutes about something and something else. So yeah, I agree.
I find that most of the people that I know have been CEOs of their own company, have had a lot of freedom to be like that, tend to be like that. And they're not plebes like me, you know, or as part of a cog, you know, that really just needs to get things done. And and he's a great guy. I mean, he seems like a really wonderful resident, but may not be the right person.
All right.
So the next candidate is ready. Are we ready?
Sure.
I think so, yeah.
Joining now. also believe the first candidate and last candidate may come from the same household. Thus the
Oh, right. Okay,
Oh.
sorry. I'm like,
duplication.
okay.
That's great. Okay.
Okay, Sarah, can you hear us?
It looks like
Oh, here
the
it goes.
audio is joining in now. So we're not hearing you.
If you join the internet audio.
I think it's good.
Hi, sorry. Hi. thank
Not a
That's
problem.
okay.
Welcome. Yes, it's we believe to be the very first Lafayette Commission virtual interviews ever. And so we're all in this together. So we're very aware and understanding of technical issues as they happen during the meeting. So welcome, Sarah. And I'm the Vice Mayor, Susan Candell, and the Mayor, Mike Anderson, is here.
All right.
And then the Chair of the Design Review Commission, Patrick Collins, is here as well. So
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you. We're each going to take turns asking you questions and take as much time as you think necessary for each of them, please. Great. So first off, please tell us about yourself, your professional background, your volunteer experience, and why you want to serve on this commission.
My name is Sarah Fallahi, and I live in Lafayette. I got my bachelor in architecture, and I continued to get my master. I have Master of Landscape Architecture from University of Texas at Austin. And then we moved to Bay Area 2015. I worked for SWA design firm, it's a landscape design firm in San Francisco, working on different residential and planning projects, actually residential landscape projects. So my main focus through the design was environmental aspect and aesthetic of the city. And then I've been working for AECOM in San Francisco, working on different type of projects locally and internationally, mostly focused on master planning and residential landscape. We worked on the Treasure Island Promenade, Lake Mary Plaza, and so many different scale actually of the landscape. So the other question about the volunteer job, I was part of the design review for UC Berkeley. I attended many design review for environmental department, and I also attended the planning hearing for different projects that we had. What else? The volunteering. And I have been teaching in different kind of categories. I started from university and continued when I worked for AECOM, like teaching assistant and teaching in design, and also different communicational programs for our firm. And the last question, why I want to be on this position. Actually, as a designer, I'm really interested how our city looks like gradually and how we can just have an impact as a designer. So I think just responsible as a designer for my city, that was the main reason that I applied for this position.
Great. Can I ask one really quick thing? You went by it fast. Is that you are on the design review for UC Berkeley? What did that mean?
No, actually, for the students, University of Berkeley, for the design review that they had on a different semester, I attended a different design review as a critic for the students.
Okay, thank you.
So have you attended any of Lafayette's Design Review Commission meetings?
No, I haven't. No.
Thank you.
What would you consider the best and the worst projects in downtown Lafayette and why? And how about the residential areas of town?
So the best and worst projects, maybe I just need to answer your question based on my experience as a landscape designer. I'm not sure if you're specifically asking for building or like the overall.
No, just your opinion.
So we live in a trail area really close to the Moraga Boulevard, and I'm always impressed with the feeling that I get from the Moraga Boulevard, and I think it's my favorite street because of the trees, because of the type of the residential houses that we have. I mean, they're not modern or maybe specific buildings, but working on different elements and getting together as a whole, it makes a good experience and make a place unique. But I think my worst experience, so when we moved to Lafayette 2 years ago, I have been always looking for a good gathering area, good open space, flexible open space. I'm a mom, so I'm always looking for a good park. We always go to Walnut Creek or Moraga, and I think Lafayette has a good potential for having a more active, livable streetscape. When I go to Whole Foods and I see the parking space and I see the potential for having the flexible open space that kids can gather, playground or any even the open space, the flexible open lawn that it's safe for kids. I think we lack those kind of programs. Also, Mon Diablo Boulevard. I mean, I love the way the Lafayette downtown is active, but the whole Mon Diablo street has this potential. And when we move and pass the central part of the downtown, because of the lack of different programs, that activity gets less and less. So maybe I cannot call on a specific, I mean, there are some building facade that maybe I don't like, but for me, we need more active open space area or park or gathering area, which has the shaded structure. It shouldn't be like anything complicated, but it could gather more people in a safe area.
Okay, thank you. Looking ahead, what do you see as Lafayette's biggest challenges, and what role do you see the Design Review Commission has in addressing them?
So I think the growth of housing could be the biggest challenges for Lafayette, and as we need more residents and more housing, this gets more complicated. We don't want to disturb the nature and the environment, but if there is no comprehensive guidelines or standards, we might have to do that. So I think have a comprehensive design standard which looks on different criteria like the housing, like the traffic, the open space, and overall environmental programs, and different programs could help to deal with these challenges.
So going back, what role do you think the Design Review Commission has in addressing them?
Maybe it's not specifically the role of the design review. I mean, yes, it is having these, reviewing the guidelines and having all these criterias as a comprehensive standard for the city.
That's okay. That was the answer. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So describe your experience working as a member of a team. Provide examples of other committees you have served on that you feel worked effectively.
So as a landscape design leader for different projects, I have to work on a team every day. And also our major landscape architecture is something that we need continuously work with different disciplines, planning, sustainable project department, infrastructure. I think the main thing is having the respect for all the team members and communicate well about the problems and the challenges and hearing other people and also speaking up about the problem and issue that's coming up for any projects or any issues that's happening. Understanding the role of each team member and helping, if we can, seeing everyone on the same level. I think based on my experience, these are the main factors. Also, for me, working on like different projects that we need to communicate well with different teams, and we don't get enough answer or enough maybe answer. Maybe having many follow-up meetings could help also when we work as a team, because sometimes we have our responsibility, but without following up and communicating and different meetings, that doesn't give us the best results. Collaboration and respect, I think, for the all team members would be the first factor for me.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Have you taken a position in public on any pending applications in Lafayette?
No. Okay. As you may know, certain new laws such as SB 35 and SB 330 are adjusting how the city may review a project and focusing more on objective standards. So how do you see this affecting the ability of the city's commissions to facilitate well-designed buildings?
Maybe I touched base on these, on the other question that you asked. I think it's hard to answer, but because design is not something that we go through the checklist and just say because we follow all these checklists and we have done all these, that's good design. Everything could work together. Maybe I touch base on this as having a specific design set or standard from design committee could help on this. I think that would be, I think, the best, or expressing the critic or just your feedback, like more like a recommendation. I'm just giving an example as a landscape designer that this place could be replaced with just simple elements. If it has shade or if it's like this, could work better, and the owner could be on the same page on this. But I think first, if we wanna showing our idea, we need to have a specific design guidelines for that.
Well, thank you.
Okay, as a commissioner, you will be required to file annual statements with the Fair Political Practices Commission, disclosing any economic interest you have in the city. For example, this could involve disclosing all investments, business interests, and income received from business located in Lafayette. Are you comfortable with this?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have the time to commit to both regular and special commission meetings? This includes serving on subcommittees and attending application review committee meetings.
So thankfully, I work full time, but I have flexible time. I have flexible work schedule. I know it takes a lot of time and energy, but I can definitely make it work. Compensate with the work that I have for my office.
Great. All right. Do you have any questions for us?
No, thank you so much for the opportunity, and it was a great pleasure to talk with you.
And then is there anything else you would like to share with us? Any other points or perspective?
I'm just passionate about how we deal with environment and how we keep our nature as it is. And Lafayette has a great potential for our kids, for our citizens to be more active and use our streetscape and sidewalks. We don't want to always drive to the cities nearby. We have everything and we can make it better. So just want to express my passion about the city that I have and live. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for be willing to come here and volunteer your time. And Sarah will give you how to expect or when to expect to hear from us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the time.
So, we are trying to fill 2 candidate spots, and we'll get back with you by the end of next week.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay. All right, quick review. Just to keep it consistent.
I probably
Well,
had similar concerns about her getting to the point and answering the specific questions she was asked. I like the idea of having a landscape architect, but as the new rules come into effect, those types of things that we get to add to projects as far as landscaping and accoutrement is reduced. That's not to say I wouldn't love to have a landscape architect on the commission. I just don't know that she's really the best, well, certainly the best candidate that we have today, but I don't know. I don't think it's a great fit.
Well, my sense was the same. And I think that, she seemed to me to have some difficulty clearly expressing her opinion or her answers to the question. And, once again, I think being succinct is really important in a committee or commission setting. So I thought she was very interesting. I'd love to see a landscape architect on the design review, but I don't think she's the one for that role.
Yeah, same thing. I think, unfortunately, I think she started off strong. And then as it wore on and the questions got a little more detailed, that's when it was apparent that that's where she was not as concise. But yeah. So that I was like, oh, come on. I was hoping she was going to maintain that same focus. And unfortunately she did not. So, okay. So how do you guys, what's that?
Just regarding the last candidate, I concur with Chair Collins about it would be great to have a landscape architect on the DRC, but short of that, landscape architecture expertise and cityscape, we do have 2 openings on DeSimpic for the Downtown Street Improvement Master Plan Implementation Committee. So I think she would be a very good candidate for that.
Excellent idea. So how does that happen? Like when So Sarah, when you call them back, is there, you know, do you get to nudge them? I mean, just saying.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, it's okay for us to do that. I didn't know if that was.
Well, they want to volunteer. I mean, that's the
Right.
great thing, is that they want to be participants. And this process gives us a chance to meet them and they meet us. And we just see a better fit, you know, why not? Why not?
Perfect. I'm glad. That's great.
So for me, we've got Jonathan Gray as a yes, definite.
Mhm.
But I'm looking for a number 2, and I'm not really seeing anyone that comes up near enough to recommend. So I looked at Patrick.
I thought the first guy was pretty good. I had a bunch of notes about him. I guess maybe Greg and Sarah can tell me. I mean, is this going to be it for the candidates we're going to see? You know, because there's been a lot of turnover, but you know, you don't know. You might have somebody that you have for a good long time. You're committing, I would assume, to these people for quite a while. So I don't think that the first guy was ideal. But if we're trying to fill a slot, he definitely was the second best. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess, Patrick, I'm kind of coming back to you. This is your team. And
Yeah.
so is he going to be able to contribute? You know,
Well, what I don't think it's, for me, I don't think it's something that he wouldn't be able to contribute, but it's more of what potential person could be out there. And if I look back over 6 or 7 commissioners that have left, they were, in my opinion, much higher in that skill for that position than he is. So do you give him the job because it's open, or do you say you don't give him the job because you're hoping you're going to get another candidate more like John, you know? And there have been quite a few, and I've only been on the commission for 3.5 years, but there were several people on design review that were really, really well qualified. And I'd like to see someone like that more if we can wait. But I mean, that's why I'm asking Greg and Sarah what your opinion is.
So ultimately, we do need to fill at least one position right now.
Well, I think we got that one solved. I think we all agree that
Yes. So
John Gray is our guy.
there is the possibility of just doing that for now, and then putting out another advertisement in a couple months.
Is that?
I would be comfortable with that.
I'm fine with that. I've seen it work both ways. I've seen the delay and then you find someone, and then I've seen the delay and then no one shows up. And you kind of just wait.
Actually, that makes me think of how I got hired.
I was going to mention that, but
you guys didn't pick me the first time. I got it on the second bout, so
I wasn't involved.
I think that would be good because if we put it out in another month or two, and I'm sure and maybe you should tell him, recompete, and if there's nothing else at that point, then we give him the job. I think that would work for me.
Well, you know, one of the things we did with the planning commission is that we said, you know, we have not decided on the second person yet. So we are going to go out and see what else is out there, but are you willing to kind of be there in a holding pattern for us if in fact we find, you know, we want to call you in? And people get a little offended, but most people say, yeah, okay. I mean, not necessarily because they want to interview again. It's more, well, you haven't quite seen enough of the people you want, so maybe you want to look a little more. And I can live with that.
Yeah.
Some people will go for it, some people won't. Depends.
I think his answer is like, have I ever been to a design review committee meeting? It's like, the answer is no. It's like, well, you better start coming. You know?
Yeah.
Like, and they can learn
good.
And then
Yeah.
start taking stuff
Yeah.
up and study up and do a better time. Sometimes that will encourage people to step up their game.
Or they might come to one and say, oh my God, I'm
Yeah,
glad I
what the
didn't get selected for that.
That would be
might
good
even be
too.
better.
Yes.
Particularly that chair, man, he's a mess.
Yeah, seriously.
Right.
Exactly. So
All right.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So I think we have
Sarah? You clear?
Clear.
Okay. All right.
okay, so
Alright.
now,
So,
Now-
and just actually, so I am extraordinarily clear, sort of the
Always
holding,
good.
the holding pattern would be for the first candidate
Yeah.
only. And then we'll go out immediately or in another couple months or.
I would suggest that we want John on the next agenda.
Mhm.
And we
Yeah.
say we're going to hold open the pool and see if we can get some more candidates.
Got it.
And then do that immediately. And if more come in, that's great. If not, then we come back and we decide, all right, so what do you want to do? And that will take probably a couple of months for that whole process to unfold.
How long ago did you close this, or how long ago was the last time you advertised this position?
That's a great question. I think it was like mid-February when it closed.
Okay, so just from my own personal experience, there's a whole lot of people out there now whose lives have changed,
yes,
and we're seeing a lot better resumes now for everything.
we
So
may.
there may
We
be some
may.
newly retired people that are looking to do something. So
Yeah,
I
good
think
point.
doing it right away would be a good idea.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Certainly.
Well, this wasn't so bad. We got somebody.
We
Oh,
did,
yeah.
yay.
Got all right. Yeah.
Man, you got a winner.
Yeah.
Total winner. Total winner.
Yeah.
We were supposed to take public comment. Did we get any?
Let me just
Good
double
question.
check.
I have been checking throughout and didn't see any up until this point, but
Good.
Sarah's confirming.
Nothing new.
Okay, so I guess we can adjourn.
Absolutely. Thank you,
All
Susan.
right.
Thank
No,
you,
no, thank you
everyone.
guys.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you all
Good
very
evening.
much.
Bye.